Welcome to the Education Festival. I am Mellie Pullman, the academic lead of the Teaching Academy. I'm here with the Rector, Cisca Wijmenga, and our student representative, Marisa Timenha. Today we have our introduction here, but we have many things going on this week. We've got workshops, we've got several sessions, we've got guest panelists, and we've also got some amazing keynotes. So I encourage everyone to check out our schedule. We still have availability in the workshops, and of course all the rest of the sessions and events are open. So please check it out online and sign up. So I'm going to start off by asking Cisca some questions about education. What do you think our biggest challenge is, Cisca, in teaching and learning right now?
Yeah, so thank you, Mellie, for that question. But before I start answering it, I really would like to take this opportunity to thank you, but all the other people who have worked so hard to make this week happen. I think last year was the first time we had an education festival. And then I spoke and said, I hope this will become a tradition, and here we are again. So I think this is quite amazing. So thank you and the rest of the team very much for that. Yes, so what are the challenges? Well, I think there's a couple of challenges. We had, of course, the pandemic for 2 years, and I think, what we now see, it's kind of hard to engage everybody back to on-campus education, so that's something we have to think about. How do we kind of regain a community? But also, what kind of lessons are we learning from this pandemic? I now see that students kind of rather would like to have their classes recorded because they can do it in their own time, in their own pace, and maybe that's something that is changing education forever. So how are we going to learn from this pandemic, and how are we going to kind of rebuild a new system of active education, but also the more blended type of education? So quite some challenges ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. And over to you, Marisa, how do you suggest we reactivate students after the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a very challenging question. And first of all, for the people at home, I'm not sure if you hear the siren, but apparently it's celebrating the start of the education festival. So if you have some background noise, that's because of that. But activating students, it's one of the biggest challenges, I would say. And it's something I noticed that's not only happening here in Groningen, in the Netherlands, but also internationally. I was speaking to some professors from Poland who experienced the same difficulties. So it's actually a very, very common problem. Yeah, indeed. So my suggestion for that would be to start with having incentives for events on site. So within the faculties, so that students and staff can get to know each other, and it's not just behind the screen, but actually talk to each other, be there in person. And that doesn't need to be an event that's focused on studying. Can also be, screening a movie or anything, but just something where you come together and feel like you are part of that community.
So do you see a role for study associations there?
Yes, I do. Especially because the study organizations are the bridge between staff and students, right? So I think there's definitely a role for a study association, and well, they also know what are fun activities to do, so that's really something they can take on within their programs and their faculties, for sure. Yeah. And I also think that we should keep in mind that this transition to being in person again, it's not just a transition to the old. It's a different situation now. So we also have a transition to a new, right? So I think we should take that into account when trying to activate students again. And keep in mind that there are also positive aspects to online learning. So maybe something like recorded lectures, that can be very beneficial. And that can also help students engage with their learning again, if there is the opportunity to rewatch lectures. And this is just one of the suggestions. But I think we should keep in mind that there were benefits to online learning, and I think those benefits, we should not be afraid to embrace those things while we go back to in-person teaching.
So what's your perspective on this?
Well, I think from the Teaching Academy perspective, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how do you do the best of both worlds? How do you take what we've learned from the pandemic and exploit the things that were the online learning that was effective, and also looking at, well, what didn't work? How can we do that better? And as you can see, this year we've done sessions on how to make great podcasts, and I think you'll see this afternoon there's another session on how to make good videos. So we really think about that intentional design, like what's going to happen in the classroom to make that really engaging, and then also what's going to happen digitally so that people actually like that environment and think that that was a worthwhile way to learn. Instead of going to a large lecture, they might actually think it's quite nice, as you're saying, to rewind, to have shorter, more focused videos instead of having to sit for an hour and a half potentially, which could be quite difficult for some. So we think about those things, and I think that's I'm representing the perspective of the Teaching Academy, and we really care a lot about looking at the learning outcomes and looking at intentional educational design to really bring our students into an engaged space and have them enjoy their learning experience. I want to point out some of the additional sessions that will touch on that. We've got the Global Engagement Challenge-Based Learning and Practice. That's also this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And we have a panel on large classrooms, one of the more challenging environments to build connections with the students and increase engagement. That's going to be Thursday at 11 o'clock. So hopefully people who care a lot about this topic can attend those.
And on Tuesday, there is also a workshop on active learning in the classroom, which ties into this neatly as well.
Thank you. Back to you, Cisca. What should an academic environment be? We're going to look at it from multiple perspectives, but in your view, what's your vision of the academic environment?
Yeah, so I think most important is, for me, it's a community, and it's a community of students and staff together. And I think in an academic environment, it's extremely important to be curious, to explore and to learn all the time. So also this kind of personal journey as a student, but also as a teacher, how can you develop yourself all the time? And I also think the world has shown us now that, we're dealing with really wicked, large societal issues. And for me, it's important that we also think, well, what type of students are we going to deliver as an academic environment? So we need students that dare to ask questions all the time, because I think science is about doubting all the time and asking questions. Be critical, and also apply your knowledge, your speciality, together with people from different backgrounds, and really try together to solve those big issues. So this interdisciplinarity, I think, is extremely important. So the community, but also think a little bit more about, well, what type of students do we want to deliver to enter this complex world?
What's your view from a student perspective, Marisa?
On what an ideal academic environment would be? Yeah. I think it has a lot of overlap with what Cisca says. I think it's very important to foster curiosity and to reward curiosity. curiosity, it sometimes can be quite an annoying thing. But I think it's important nonetheless to, really reward it if students, and also if staff, of course, but if they are interested in something maybe that lies a little bit outside of the scope of what you would normally do, I think it's important to take that seriously and to reward it, because ultimately curiosity opens up new opportunities, right? I'm now, for instance, I'm involved with research, and I never imagined I would be at this stage of my academic career, so to say, but because I was curious and because it was rewarded, I got to have that opportunity. And I think that's very important for students to know as well, that if they have questions, if they have something they would like to pursue, that the room to do so is there. And of course, being curious and finding out new things, that comes with making mistakes, as we all know. And making mistakes, it's difficult, but it's an integral part of learning. And I also think, I think that we should be aware that making mistakes is part of that journey. And it is something that we should embrace, as difficult as it might be. Because if we don't make mistakes, we will never learn from them, right? And then we will never try anything ever again. Yeah. So I think it's important for an academic environment to embrace making mistakes and to be open-minded about those things. Yeah. So, Mellie, what do you see an academic environment as?
You all have covered a lot of the topics, which I of course agree with. So I'll just state it simply, is that I see the academic environment as a place to connect people, the whole social aspect, with ideas. And the ideas are coming across through both research and teaching. So I see us as a big social network, but at the same time, we are a complex adaptive system. And in that system, we have to face disruptions, and we have to then recover and figure out how to adapt to that. And that's what we're in the process of doing. So I'm very hopeful, and of course, I'm going to tell you about some of the sessions that we have related to this. As Cisca mentioned, the wicked problems. We've got a workshop on creating wicked students, redesigning courses for a complex world. That's by Paul Hanstead, who's come over to give the workshop. Last year, he was one of our most popular speakers, and that's going to be Wednesday, April 6th at 1 o'clock. We also have a keynote on questionality as a learning strategy, the power of inquiry to spark breakthrough ideas. That's from Natalie Walsh, who's from Ireland, and she will be speaking on Tuesday, the 5th of April at 9 a.m. So I think those should be really interesting and fun opportunities for everybody. Well, shifting gears to our last topic. Marissa, I'm going to start with you. Mm-hmm. Well-being. How far should the university be going in terms of addressing student well-being?
Yeah, that's that's quite a dilemma you have there, I think, because you need to draw a line somewhere, and it's very difficult to establish that line. So for me, I'm not sure what factors are going into that decision. I'm not aware of all the factors that need to be taken into account. But I do know that visibility is a very important thing. And not just visibility in terms of information being available, that's of course important, but visibility in the sense that the community knows that this is something that is important and that is being cared about and that is taken seriously. Because I think if you don't have that feeling, it is more difficult to actually improve your own well-being as well, because it feels like, oh, this is not something that is as important, and you get into that spiral. So I don't need to have any support or anything. So visibility, very important, and I think there's a role for the university here, not in the sense that the university has to do everything for everyone, provide everything with regards to well-being, but it does have a role, I think, in giving out the tools and giving out the information that people can use to take charge of their well-being and to see how they can improve it. So I think that's a very important role for the university, to be vocal about that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You want me to respond to that?
Yes, please.
Now, extremely important issue, of course, and I think not only for students, but of course also for all our staff. We talked about this a lot. over the past 2 years, because the corona pandemic has made this more visible, of course.
Yeah.
And not only in the university, but again also with the other universities in the Netherlands. We have quite some instruments in place, and I also noticed over the past 2 years that the way that students perceive information is sometimes quite different from how we give information. Yeah. But you talked about a line, and that's very important. So I'll think, we're not an institute of cure, but we are an institute of care. And for me, it's very important that we also work on preventing that students will get into real trouble. And if so, then of course we have to point them to the right healthcare takers. And in order to understand, well, how do we do this together and what could we do better? There is now a task force, Wellbeing, student well-being. There's all kind of people involved in this, including students, to really think on, well, what can we also do more on the preventive side? And also to work on resilience, because I think if as a student you learn to become a little bit more resilient during your student life, that's something you benefit from the rest of your life. So it would be fantastic if we as a university could contribute to that. So yes, on the one hand we have quite a lot in place already, but sometimes it's not easy to find. I completely agree with you. And on the other hand, there's probably still a little bit more we can do, but we all have a responsibility here, the university and the students, and we're going to work on that together.
All right, thank you, yeah.
Great. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's links to the program about well-being. On Tuesday, tomorrow, we've got a 1 o'clock session on fostering and stimulating student well-being in higher education. And then on Wednesday, we have a keynote, the intentional centering of wellness and belonging in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's by Janet Thompson, who's come to speak to us. So to wrap it up with a final question for Cisca, what do you think we should be considering this week as the week goes by, but also as we look into the future? What kind of questions are there for us to ponder?
No, I really hope that this week will learn us a little bit more on how can we make an engaged community of both students and staff, where everybody is really eager to contribute, but also to learn. And at the same time, I also think about, well, how should education at the university in the future, and the future is now, I would say, really look like? Because our world has changed quite rapidly and is still changing, of course. So what does that require from a university? Because I think if we look at universities, they're still kind of operating in a way they also did when I was a student. And as you correctly pointed out, there's probably a need to also make some changes there. So I really hope that by Friday, we as a board also get some feedback from the community on how we see this all together and what we could do, and maybe how we then as a board can facilitate this.
Great.
So I wish everybody a really inspiring week and lots of success.
Thank you, and we're going to have a lot of ideas to solve all the world's problems. Okay, so I hope you all enjoy our great program this week. I want to just thank everybody that's been involved in setting up the program, and also everybody that is contributing. We've got some contributors, of course, from within our own university, but people coming from other universities to share their best practices. And speaking of best practices, on Friday we'll have our closing ceremony, and that's going to be at 12 or noon on Friday, best practice in teaching and learning, and we've got a number of contestants. If you'd like to check out the videos that each of the contestants have done on their best practices, you can find them on our website. The students can also vote for the best practice on the website, so we really encourage that. We want to have a lot of feedback from students. We really hope that you enjoy the Education Festival and get inspired with ideas for both teaching and learning. Thank you, everyone.